So we're going to start the third chapter of Ketubot. The first chapter was really about virginity and actually about the Ketubah itself. The second chapter was about evidence, who we believe, who we don't believe, questions of truth. The third chapter hinges on a verse from Devarim, from Deuteronomy. So a man finds a virgin. Actually, Na'ara B'tula is a youthful virgin who's not betrothed. And he seizes her and he has sex with her and they are discovered. So the man who lay with her shall pay the girl's father 50 pieces of silver. This is actually 200 zuz, by the way. So this is the price of the ketubah. This is the price of the ketubah for a virgin. Velo tieh leisha, and she shall be his wife. The tachat asher inna lo yuchal shalcha kol yamav. And because he's violated her, he can never divorce her for all of his days. And it's very interesting that the Mishnah is going to really explore the nature of this fine. You know, for what purpose is it paid? How much is it paid? To whom is it paid? So the Mishnah is going to explore the nature of the fine. So, and it doesn't, I mean, we read this verse with shock, and none of that comes through in the Mishnah, but then it's difficult to see why not. Whether anyway, we might be able to think about that when we finish the chapter. The whole of this chapter and the beginning of the next chapter deals with this issue. But the Mishnah is going to begin by focusing on the words Na'ara B'tula, a virgin who's Na'ara B'tula Sherlo or Rasa. So a man finds a virgin, a youth who's not betrothed. So this fine seems to be payable specifically to certain kinds of sexual encounters. And that doesn't mean others are unpunished. And we'll see actually later that there's a death penalty sometimes. But in these situations, there seems to be a financial penalty. And the Mishnah is going to explore where this applies. Elu narot sheyesh lahem knas. So these are the girls that have a fine, i.e., this is where the penalty applies. And the Gemara, by the way, explains that they have to be youthful, so between the age of 12 and 12 and a half, and they have to be a virgin. But the Mishnah is going to say, someone who had intercourse with a mamzeret, the product of an illicit relationship, or a tina. And tina is these are basically a non-Jew. These are non-Jews. They were essentially these are Gibeonites. They were kind of converted, but not really in the time of Joshua. But they're not accepted as Jews. And the Kutit's translated actually in this translation as a Samaritan, but let's leave that as a Samaritan. And the interesting thing is, by the way, these are all girls to whom the man, if he's Jewish, could not have got married. So he seems to me couldn't get married to them, but he's definitely going to pay the fine for the sexual encounter with them. Let's keep going. Habala gioret velashvuya velashifcha sheniftu or shenigaru or shenishtachru pchot pechutot mibnot shalosh shanim v'yom echad. We've seen this classification before. Someone who had intercourse with a convert or a captive or a slave, who was redeemed or converted or freed, when under the age of 3 years and a day. So the Mishnah has a concept that these categories of women have undoubtedly been abused or raped during their lifetimes, but somehow under the age of 3 and a day, it's just not considered. It's not considered a legal fact. So but nevertheless, and the fine is going to be paid because they're considered virgins, because this happened under the age of 3. And let's go to another section of forbidden relationships, which are actually not punishable by the death penalty. So these are all listed in the Parsha of Kedoshim, but they're not listed with a death penalty. Well, and the Mishnah is going to explore this a little bit. Haba al achoto ve'al achot aviv ve'al achot imo ve'al achot ishto ve'al eshet achiv ve'al eshet achi aviv ve'al hanida. Someone who has intercourse with his sister, or his father's sister, or his mother's sister, or the sister of his wife, with the wife of his brother, with the wife of the brother of his father, or with a woman who's menstruating, yesh lahen knas. They have a fine. And the Mishnah is going to explain. So there is a punishment of karet, of cutting off, for a relationship with these, but ein bahem mitat beit din. There's no death penalty. So somehow it seems as if there's no death penalty, there is a fine. And the next Mishnah explains this in a little bit more detail. Ve'elu she'ein lahem knas. These are ones who don't have a fine. Habal ha'yoret ve'lashviyah ve'lashivcha sheniftu she'gapush nishtachru yeterot al benot shalosh shanim v'yom echad. So someone who had intercourse with these 3 categories, the convert, the captive, or a slave, who were redeemed or converted or freed, but over the age of 3 years and 1 day. So these are assumed to have been sexually abused, and the fine doesn't apply because the text says, Betula, a virgin. Rabbi Yehuda is going to disagree. Rabbi Yehuda omer, shvua shenifdat, harehi biktushata. Rabbi Yehuda says a female captive who was redeemed is actually considered to be still in a state of holiness, even if she, was of age. Haba al bitor. Now we're going to have a list of really forbidden relationships. Haba al bitor ve'al bat bitor ve'al bat beno ve'al bat ishto ve'al bat bita ve'al bat bena ein lahem knas. Someone who had intercourse with his daughter, or his daughter's daughter, or his son's daughter, or his wife's daughter, or her son's daughter, or her daughter's daughter, they have no fine. There's no fine payable. Because he forfeits his life. There's a death penalty for these relationships. And his life is in the hands of the Bet Din. Anyone who forfeits his life pays no money, i.e. doesn't pay a financial penalty. This is a very interesting misquote. The Torah in Shemot talks about a situation where someone crashes into a pregnant woman, and she might or might not miscarry. But if she miscarries and loses the baby, and this is what we seem to have, a son in this context seems to refer to a fatal impact on the fetus. But the Mishnah here is extending it to really any sort of fatal accident. If there's no death, anosh yanesh. If there's no death, then he shall be fined, i.e., sorry, I've misquoted the text in Shemot. The baby did miscarry, but the baby did miscarry, but the mother survived. The fetus miscarried, but the mother survived. So there was no adult death. And then the Torah rules there, anosh yanesh, he shall be fined, i.e. we pay monetary damages actually for damage to a fetus. Very interesting, by the way, in the context of halacha on abortion. that a fetus clearly from these verses, and the halacha backs this up, isn't considered to have the same legal standing as a human being. But anyway, this Mishnah is saying, okay, if you forfeit your life, if you forfeit a life, then you're liable. If you forfeit your life, you're not liable for monetary damages. And the Mishnah isn't going to conclude this list by declaring Na'ara shenit arsa or shenit garsha, a girl who was betrothed, but then was divorced. A girl who was betrothed and then divorced. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili Omer Ein La Knas. Rabbi Yossi, the Galili, says she doesn't receive a fine. This is someone who was, remember the text says, she had to be a virgin who was not betrothed. Asher lo orasa. So the question is, okay, not betrothed, what does that mean? Does that mean never betrothed? I.e., she's still in her father's remit? Or might it refer to someone who's left her father's remit when she was divorced, but when she was betrothed, and then, of course, she's divorced, she's a free agent? And Rabbi Akiva says, really interesting comment from Rabbi Akiva, and the halacha goes according to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva Omer, yesh la knas, she has a fine. Yesh la knas, knasa la'atzma. The fine belongs to her. So she retains her own legal personality, and she gets the fine.